Score more with the college-branded Venmo debit card and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash. Got paid back? With the Venmo debit card, you can instantly access your balance and spend on what you want, like game day snacks, gear, tickets, and more. The more you do, the more cash back you can earn. Plus, there's no monthly fee or minimum balance. Sign up now at Venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
So good, so good, so good.
New spring arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Rag & Bone, Marc Jacobs, Free People, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. Today, I'm joined by my politics team colleagues, higher education reporter Jane Sartwell and Danielle Battaglia, who covers Congress, as we record our latest episode at the start of another snowy, wintry week in North Carolina. During the few days of no snow and ice, Jane was covering the UNC Board of Governors, and they talked about the budget and academic freedom and job cuts. Let's talk about money at the UNC level.
Sure. So the Board of Governors announced that they're bringing $100 million back into the budget through two main strategies. The first, which I'm sure listeners have heard about, is the tuition increases at the UNC institutions, or most of the UNC institutions, at or below 3%. That's slated to bring in $50 million back into the system budget, and the other is job cuts. So the president, Peter Hans, announced that they've successfully cut 700 administrative positions throughout the UNC system. That is going to save another $50 million in salary and benefits.
They say what they're going to spend it on?
Not yet.
Mm-hmm. What's the breakdown of the job cuts?
Well, it's not all layoffs. They also rely on attrition, buyouts, and not filling vacant positions and other kind of gimmicks to get to that number. But yeah, so while some people have or will lose their jobs, it's not all 700 layoffs.
Mm-hmm. Was there conversation around why they targeted these specific positions, or like, I guess, who made the call, or did they question it at all, or are they all in agreement on where to cut and the impacts there?
They're targeting administrative bloat is, I think, the idea behind the cuts. There's plenty of kind of reasons for it, but among those is the lack of a state budget, which I know you reported on in depth last week. So yeah, there's just there's pressures from kind of all sides on both the system and specific schools like Chapel Hill.
So the latest on North Carolina state budget is 2025 came and went with no state budget. 2026, hope springs eternal, which I wrote in a story looking at Republican House Speaker Dustin Hall's first year as Speaker, which is pretty much defined by the budget stalemate and his position and the House Republican caucus position. So you can read more about that in newsobserver.com about Hall really being dug into this trench warfare is how I usually describe the annual budget fight. This time it's just between the Senate and the House, and the governor really isn't even part of it at all at this point. So we're still got a few more months before the General Assembly comes back officially for the spring session, and whether or not they'll pass a spending plan, which includes a big chunk of it is higher education money. Was there much talk about any sort of hopefulness, acceptance that, there isn't any money coming in the future?
There is a lot of hand wringing about it. I wouldn't say I noticed a lot of hope or excitement in those conversations, but yeah, I think everyone's relying on something coming through at some point.
Well, we're going to talk about the federal government budget here in a minute, but before we move on to Danielle and what's going on in DC, what's the latest on this academic freedom conversation at Board of Governors?
Yeah, so they took up this new they're considering this new definition of academic freedom that places key stipulations on what is protected by the concept and what is not. Honestly, I was expecting a lot more rancorous debate. There was a lot of debate about tuition, but when it came to academic freedom, almost no one had much to share. They kind of unanimously approved it to be voted on at the February meeting, or at this next meeting, and headed into closed session. So it was sort of tame.
Okay. Well, moving on to our nation's capital. We're recording this on Monday, February 2nd. You all are listening to this on Tuesday or later. And there's a budget battle in DC, as seems to be the norm up there too. It's a little bit different than in the state. We have this continuing spending levels in North Carolina, so there's no threat of a shutdown. And this time, the federal government shutdown is also tied to the Trump administration's handling of ICE in Minnesota. And Senator Thom Tillis has plenty to say. Danielle, where do we stand here this week, this first week in February?
Yeah, it's a little interesting because we are in a government shutdown right now. I thought USA Today editor Susan Page had a great article on this week, talking about how this has become so normal at this point that we aren't really hearing about it, which is abnormal for DC. Worth checking out. But she had highlighted this because we are in a government shutdown. One thing that makes this a little different is President Trump had said if it looked like the Senate would pass this by Friday night and that he believed the House would come back Monday today and get this passed before tomorrow, basically, he would not start the process of shutting down the government. And so there's this weird period where I'm not even sure federal government workers know if they're in a shutdown or not right now. It's been a little confusing. And so they're hoping tonight that the House can come to a decision. There's a lot of different layers to this because what is happening is basically there were 6 appropriation bills that still need to be passed. So we're in a partial shutdown, not a full shutdown, because there's 12 altogether. 6 of them have been passed, 6 haven't. These 6 were passed by the House. They went before the Senate last week after the shooting death of Alex Preddy in Minneapolis by ICE agents. They decided that they wanted to pull the DHS funding out of DHS, being the Department of Homeland Security. They wanted to pull that out of these other 6 appropriation bills and re-examine the funding for ICE. And so essentially they're doing some of the bills, they're going to continue this into, I want to say, the fall. And then with the DHS spending, they're going to do like a 2-week continuation of spending levels and try to work out new guidelines for how ICE can operate. And so that's something they'll be fighting over for weeks to come. But that means that even though the House has passed these bills, they now have to come back because the Senate has done what the House has already done. So there's a lot of moving parts here. They're hoping to get that done by tonight.
And this is Monday night for
Yes.
people that are listening to this on Tuesday. So we'll probably know by then. What are some of the political pressures of Democrats or what their voters want? Because budgets are complicated, and how that this is tied to this issue that is national, international news at this point.
I mean, everything that happens, right, has some impact on the upcoming election. So we're looking at 2026 and the midterm elections. One thing with government shutdowns is typically that's an indictment on the president himself. I was very interested in a High Point University poll that came out last week, where the majority of North Carolinians are actually blaming Democrats for the government shutdown. And so I'm really fascinated with that particular element. So, they're going to have to wrestle with that on top of the calls for reform with ICE itself.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with more from Danielle Battaglia and Jane Sartwell. We'll be right back.
Springfest is happening now at Lowe's. Keep the spotlight on your yard with Stay Green Premium 2 cubic foot mulch, 5 bags for $10. Plus, when you want more help indoors, get up to 40% off select major appliances that help you supercharge your chores. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid to 4/22 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. See Lowe's.com for details. Mulch offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
Chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, can make me feel like a spectator in my own life.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It's the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine preventive treatment.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan, here with higher education reporter Jane Sartwell and congressional reporter Danielle Battaglia. Before the break, we were talking about the federal budget fight, and U.S. Senator Thom Tillis, who I think everyone in North Carolina knows by now, is not running again, and he is unfiltered. So he has strong thoughts on how the Trump administration and has been handling ICE in Minnesota. So Danielle, what's the latest that Tillis has said, and if there's anything that he's been able to do being part of this conversation, being so vocal?
Yeah, he's been calling for the resignation of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. He's also told President Trump to stop listening to, and I quote, amateurs like Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller, who's one of his policy advisors, Trump's policy advisors. He's not happy with either of them. He thinks that it is hurting Trump's legacy to have both of them still in the administration. He's come out pretty vocally against them with anything from very niche Lord of the Rings references to politics references that I've had to Google, but that's very Thom Tillis if you know him. The one thing that I will say, I feel like national media is getting wrong that this is a new side of Thom Tillis. I think it's a louder side of Thom Tillis than we're used to. But if you look back 2 years ago at the senator when Trump wasn't in office and when he wasn't running for re-election, this was kind of what we saw from him when he was trying to get policy across the aisle. You would see him, not shy away from saying what he thought. This just is a louder, more unfiltered version because he doesn't have anything to lose by talking.
I did get his Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter references. That was a long social media post where he went in and pretty scathing. It's actually, I wonder, because Stephen Miller, who has also worked for Trump in his first administration, Miller went to Duke. I wonder if he was at Duke while Tillis was Speaker of the State House. So that would be an interesting crossover time period. I don't know.
I would not be surprised at all if that's true. He's also a TV and movie junkie. Like, if you want to get Thom Tillis going, talk to him about TV. It's always a fascinating conversation.
Well, we talked about the latest in votes in DC, these next few days. What is it kind of, again, like this usual, like, we'll see where this goes? I mean, is there any prediction for what people can expect is going to happen over the coming weeks. What is February going to look like at the federal government standpoint? I know it's a wild card, Trump.
It's always a wild card. Speaker Johnson is very, very set that we're going to pass these government spending bills and that will be okay. But that's going to launch straight into this conversation about what to do about ICE and their funding and how to rein them in a little bit. That might not be the best wording for that, but that's kind of what they're looking at. They're also taking up tonight on Monday night, possibly holding former President Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State, in contempt of Congress for failing to show up for a hearing. And so that is going to start a conversation both in the Rules Committee on Monday night and then further in the week, possibly a vote Wednesday to actually hold them in contempt. And then further into this month, we're also, looking at various topics that are going to come up before they go on another break, because we have federal holidays coming up again, as usual.
I should note that the weather has canceled some things. There was a at the state level, the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee on General Government was canceled. The Education Oversight Committee canceled. Those were both scheduled for Tuesday. And then the past couple podcasts we've mentioned, this House Oversight Committee where they're bringing up the leaders of Charlotte-Mecklenburg, that was canceled and rescheduled for non-weather reason, over legal reasons. And that will be, we think, happen the following week. So, that's the status of that. All right, moving on to our picks for Headliner of the Week. Jane, what's your Headliner of the Week?
I think my headliner has got to be Wilmington, where I just moved to Raleigh last month. They got 6 inches of snow over the weekend, which I believe is the most they've gotten in 40 years. So friends and family there are so excited and heading to the beach to see where the snow meets the ocean. It's pretty cool.
Did you ever get snow when you lived there?
Yeah, last year we did get a little snow, very exciting, but it was only a couple inches as I remember. So this is a much bigger deal.
All right, Danielle, what's your pick for Headliner?
Mine's a little more negative about the snow. I just moved back to Raleigh and I was promised much warmer weather than Washington, and I'm not seeing that. So I'm grumpy about the snow and want to know when warmth is coming to Raleigh.
I liked how that we finally did get a fair amount of snow in Raleigh, but I think I'm all set now for winter. And once this melts, I'm done. So I'm going to stick with the theme. And my headliner is also related to the weather. Mine is rock salt. And I was excited to learn a lot more about brine. So I cover the governor. So sometimes that means covering what the governor and his administration says about the weather. And I went out last week when Stein was at this NCDOT site over off Westgate Road. Westgate is in Northwest Raleigh, kind of near 540. It's kind of an industrial park type of area. But anyway, there's this area with all the trucks and a place known as Brine Mountain. And when I was heading out there, our photo editor, Scott Sharp, pointed out to me that brine itself cannot be a mountain because brine is mostly water. And to find out more about that, so that drove some of my line of questioning of a DOT engineer. The big pile in the big barn warehouse thing is actually rock salt, which they use to make brine. And I asked, well, where does that actually come from? And he said, over there. And I said, no, really, what's its original source? And some of it comes from the Great Lakes and some from South America, and it's shipped in or comes up the Mississippi River on barges. So anyway, that's where North Carolina gets its rock salt to make the brine. So maybe the next time we come to you on the podcast, there won't be snow and ice on the road, but hopefully I didn't just jinx it. So knock on wood. All right. Wanted to say welcome back to Raleigh to Danielle. And this is now Jane's second time on the podcast as our higher education reporter. If you haven't read her work yet, make sure that you do. All our stories are in News and Observer. And one last message about the upcoming primary and candidate questionnaires. Your candidate questionnaires are due, folks. That's Court of Appeals. That's the congressional primary. It's all the contested primaries in the legislature. So if you had not yet filled them out and send them to us, please do so. All right, we are about out of time. For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan with Danielle Battaglia, Jane Sartwell, and producer Kevin Keister. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.